Hey, how are you? Well, I wanted to include different signs and placement, and this is apolitical, it's not political, it's about following the rules. Oh, thank you. I'm moving for you. No, things have changed.
Mine's out of color printer. Mine's out of ink. I can't print it.
I don't just drink this on everybody.
After the press conference, after the press conference,
That's life, isn't it?
it said,
It's
all
vacation.
government.
Mostly not myself.
That was
So
told
much
by
more.
CNN.
Really?
Okay, so
But we're using
the governor's mandate requirement on the 6th, it says all government buildings are in mask wearing. What I did was I put it on Google, because if I missed it, I That makes absolutely no sense when it comes to science whatsoever. I would like to know where that is.
But you know, it's also going either good. Well, you know, okay. Maybe a big sign would be good. It's a work. Hey, go ahead. Okay.
rising and joining me in saying the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we go to citizens' time, I want to go over a few quick procedural matters. In particular, since this is the first meeting of a new council, I think it will be helpful to new council members and hopefully a refresher, or where it's not a refresher, helpful to the existing council members. One of the things I'm going to do a little bit differently going forward with regard to discussion, I want to talk about a little bit. I'm doing this in part because with us social distancing at the dais and then periodically members participating remotely, makes it much more difficult, frankly, to make sure people who want to speak on a subject can be seen and recognized. As you know, the way this process works is whenever you want to speak on a subject, you have to be recognized by the presiding officer, which is typically the mayor. The person recognizes you and you have the floor. Given that we're sort of spread out, it makes it a little harder to see, for example, some who might want to be recognized. Also, if anybody's participating remotely, it's also sometimes difficult to be looking at the screen at the same time you're looking elsewhere. So what I'm going to do for the foreseeable future is whenever we have a discussion item that comes up, I'm going to turn it to everyone who might speak. And I will start with a new person each time. And then I will go and I will ask every individual who would like to speak on the topic if they would like to speak. And I would encourage you, if you don't plan to or want to speak on a topic, to feel free not to, because otherwise our meetings will go on for quite some time. Everybody feels compelled to speak all the time. But I will call on everyone. We'll do at least one round of everyone before I call on somebody to speak a second time. And so hopefully that will help us manage the discussion a little better in these circumstances. Anybody have any questions about that? Okay, and that's the way we'll proceed. So the next item on the agenda is citizens' time. This is where we invite members of the public to come up and speak for 3 minutes on any topic that they would like. You don't have to have signed up to speak, but we do start with anyone who has signed up. And the first person, only person who signed up is Ms. Terry Haas. So if you could come to the microphone, please.
I have two topics I want to talk about really quickly. And at least acknowledge why I'm here. The first one is the microgram.
Sorry, that's in the time.
Quite all right. As I don't know who all is aware, but I know Lori's aware of it. I've posed some important questions to the town and to the guild on the administration of the microgrant and challenges and problems that I have with that. I know that they are working on getting some responses to me and have provided me some responses to date. I've inquired with the guild twice now, with no response at all whatsoever on their business, on their structure, on their term limits for their leadership, things of that nature. I am not a current member of the guild, but I have been a member of the guild for 3 out of the 5 years my business has been in this town. I've attended almost every meeting for at least the first 2 years of that, and every meeting is directed towards the bringing of businesses and tourism, and that's it. There has never been any leadership of businesses like mine, which is a pet sitting, dog walking business, so it's a service-based business, and I've never really experienced those other individuals with businesses of that nature in town having any sort of say in where their dollars go in that privately funded organization. I know that Supervisor Bodie is helping me to get some of those answers addressed as well. I missed the first cutoff for the Prince William County micro grant because I thought that I was going to be able to apply for the Occoquan one, and I thought that's where I should apply. I've lost 75% of my business's income during COVID. So this is a very important issue. The second topic I want to talk about, and I provided Lori a copy of my documentation, and I'll give the other copy to the clerk, is the sign that's in Riverville Park that commemorates the Dove people who are here. I think in line with the unity that's being shown throughout Prince William County towards non-dominant cultural voices, such as the schools being changed, school names being changed, things like that. It would be really nice if this community could step up to the plate before anyone forces your hand to do it. This document that I provided, I've taken a picture of that sign and the reference to the dog having departed. If you look up the definition of departed, it's a pretty dark definition, right? The first two things that come up are deceased, and then a person or people who have deceased, right? The dog didn't depart. They were driven out and decimated. So the voice that's on that sign in River Mill Park, which is a relatively new sign, I know it was there before and restored and replaced, at least I think that's the case. It needs to have a different voice, and in this day and age, the signage, the public outreach that we have going is an attempt to give non-dominant cultures a stronger voice and their own voice in talking about their own history, okay? I didn't know this, but my neighbor at the Pink White School Tea Room, she identifies as Doe, her family is Doe. Her oral history for her family is such that when the Doe disbanded and left Occoquan after contact, they joined the Pamunkey tribe of Virginia. The Pamunkey tribe did not receive federal recognition until 2015. And one concept I have that would be, I think, a very elegant way to handle this is to reach out to the federally recognized tribes of Virginia and ask them to rewrite that sign for us so that it comes from their voice, not ours. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Thank you.
On this second issue, we take this to the county's Historic Preservation Division, at least at the start. So this sign predates all of us. It was up before I even moved here, so it's been moved a couple times. But it was done, I think, as a result of the work of historians on the historic district designation. So I'm sure it hasn't been reviewed in forever. So let's start with the Historic Preservation Division, ask them for some recommendations. They may refer us to some other folks. They have some signs. In fact, I know the director of the Historic Preservation Division is very interested in Native American culture. He is interested in having Route 1 renamed along those lines. And so I know he has a lot of contacts in this field, and maybe we'll start with him. Let me make sure the clerk has a copy of that. Did you already get
Yeah,
that?
I have 2 copies.
All right, thank you for bringing that up. The other stuff with regard to the grant program, we have that on the agenda. Since you're interested in that, I'll see after we go through the rest of Citizens Time if we can move that up on the agenda. We'll talk about that earlier rather than later, so we can sort of address some of the questions you might have. Okay? All right, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir. You just give your name. I know who you are, but maybe not everybody does.
I'm Ben Dominich, and I live at Gaslight Landing, and I have been a proud resident of Occoquan Village for the last 5 years. Love the place, and so does my wife. I have been growing concerned over the probably last year or two over the signage in the town. I think we're all concerned about the aesthetic beauty of this town and the historic value of the town. And having been raised in Brooklyn, New York, where there were signs all over the street and all over the place, I don't want this place to become another Brooklyn. And I think we're beginning to get into a time where elections are coming up in a not too distant future, and there's a concern that signage may increase. So my question is not that there's any problem with signage and freedom of speech, because everybody has it, but do we have rules and regulations that are enforced relative to the proper signage, where it can be, how big it can be, all of those areas that we can regulate and make sure that things do not get out of hand. I think that's That's probably something that every resident in the town looks forward to. And again, it's not a question of people expressing their values, as long as it's done in accordance with what the town regulates and calls for. So that's my appeal to you, and I look forward to anything you can tell us about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
I did have this on the mayor's reports, an update on the status of this. And in the meantime, Ms. Fithian had contacted me today about this issue. So one of the things I wanted to do was, I'm going to, after citizens' time closes, ask for unanimous consent to add this item to the agenda as well, so we can talk about this again earlier rather than later in the meeting. Okay, does anyone else have anything for citizens' time? Okay, we'll close citizens' time. Before we start tackling other business, one of the first things we have to do as a new council is elect a vice mayor. Here's the way this works. This is not a motion and second process. That's not the process I'm going to use tonight. What I'm going to use is a call for nominations. Individuals may nominate themselves. It doesn't have to be seconded. I will continue the nominations until it appears there are no others, and then I will close the nomination. Then I will read myself again the list of individuals who have been nominated, and I will call their name out one at a time, asking people who support their election to vice mayor to indicate by raising their hands. And I'll ask the town clerk to record that. There is obviously no call for being against anyone, but if there is only one nominee, for example, or even if there are two, and if for some reason a person does not raise their hand for anyone, then that will be recorded as an abstention by a clerk. Okay, are there any questions on that? Okay, so let me open this, yes, please.
Will there be discussion, opportunity for discussion?
So there is, because it's not a because it's not a motion and a second, there is no discussion, but what I will do is during each of the council member reports, just like the board of supervisors has supervisors' time, of course, council members should feel free to go ahead and discuss that in any way they would like during that portion. Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, the opportunity for discussion during council member reports happens before the vote, correct?
No, it doesn't. This would be afterwards. I mean, if now.
It seems like the discussion should happen before the vote.
Well, again, it's not a motion and second, but as I indicated into an email that I sent to everyone, if a majority of council prefers a different process, we can use that. So is that good? So
Do you want a
like,
motion?
Yes, if you want to do a
Okay,
different.
I would like to make a motion, please, that discussion is allowed prior to the vote.
Okay, so you want nominations closed, then discussion, then a vote, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Second.
Second by Ms. Holloway. Mr. Krim, there's nothing out of order about that as far as you know, right? Okay. All right, so is there any discussion about that? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, all right, well then we will do that. So we'll have nominations, then we'll close them, then we'll have discussion, and I'll call them. Okay, so let me open the floor for nominations. Would anyone like to nominate themselves or anyone else for vice mayor?
Yes, I would like to nominate Jen Williams for vice mayor.
Okay, Ms. Loges, are you going to accept that? Okay. Ms. Loges' name is in nomination, Ms. Fithian.
I'd like to nominate Councilmember Lori Holloway for vice mayor.
Ms. Holloway, do you accept that nomination?
At this time, I do.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, I will close the nominations. Now we will have discussion. I will recognize I'll start with the folks who made the nominations, and I'll move to everyone. So, Mr. Perkins, if you would like to say anything?
Not just on the main event, but on that.
Okay, Ms. Fithian?
Councilmember Perkins, do you mean that you're going to say something after the vote?
No, this is a discussion time. I don't have anything to say at this moment.
Remember earlier I said on discussion I do 2 rounds if
Okay.
I'll discuss later.
yeah, or you can discuss it during your council report time.
Or not at all.
Or no, yes, go ahead, Ms. Fithian, you have the floor.
It is my honor and privilege to nominate Councilmember Lori Holloway to be Vice Mayor of the Occoquan Town Council. Since Lori first moved to Occoquan in 2016, she has been an ardent and effective community activist and advocate. She was named Volunteer of the Year in 2018. Whether volunteering multiple shifts at the craft show, cleaning up regularly under the 123 bridge, the spot she and her wife Dee adopted, sharing her communications expertise with the town staff, council, and mayor, promoting Occoquan constantly on social media, and participating in every town event, it has always been evident that Lori loves Occoquan. That is why I encouraged her to run for town council in 2018. Her communications, public relations, and business owner background have been a positive force on behalf of our town for the last 2 years as the council addressed myriad issues. She also served as council representative to the ARB, Architectural Review Board, for the last 3 years, and also to ASAP, the Alcohol Safety Action Program. I strongly believe that it is critical to bring a minimum of 1-term council experience to the role of vice mayor. Councilmember Lori Holloway will make an excellent vice mayor. It is not because she is my next door neighbor and friend that I nominate her this evening. I nominate her because the time, talent, and energy she devotes to this town and to this council make her the best qualified to serve as vice mayor. Her dedication and integrity are above reproach. I respectfully request that the entirety of my nomination statement be entered into the minutes of this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, without objection, that will be entered into the minutes. No objection. Ms. Holloway is blushing under the mask. Okay, Ms. Kenyon, do you have any comments? No. Okay. Ms. Loges, anything?
Sure. If I could have the microphone, I don't know if you want to. Thanks. I want to thank Councilmember Perkins for nominating me, and while it's unusual that a first-term person would come in and be nominated for vice mayor, I think that does speak to the experience that I have and that I already bring to the town, having served on the planning commission for the past 2 years alongside Councilmember Perkins on some very interesting issues that have come before town. And also having been, as a citizen, having been at most of the town council meetings for the past 2 years, including the work sessions, and having been very involved with volunteering at the arts and crafts events, and really working with town as much as possible. So I know that it is unusual to have someone coming in right off the bat, but I do think that it is a little different, someone coming in with that level of experience. I also think that my experience being a business owner for the past 12 years, some of that time was having a business in town, does give that unique perspective on the challenges of having businesses in town, as well as being a resident. And I think that unique perspective is something that I bring to the table as well. I do know that for the vice mayor, one of the biggest things about that is looking to add support to the mayor whenever needed. And I know personally, Mayor Porta and I have worked together on helping to establish a not-for-profit here in town. We had the pleasure of serving on the inaugural board for Patriots for Disabled Divers, which is a fabulous charity here in town. And so I do know that the working relationship is there, the history is there, and certainly the experience is there. So I thank you again for the nomination, and if chosen, I would be very honored to serve.
Thank you, Ms. Holloway.
Yes. Ms. Fithian, Councilmember Fithian. I'm truly honored by your nomination. I did fall in love quickly with this town and with the people. It's a privilege to serve and certainly to volunteer in such a unique place. It's a really cool town. In 3 years on the ARB, and in my first term as council member, I worked tirelessly to bring a calm, balanced voice to complex issues facing the town. It's never been about adding a line to my resume, anything like that. It's because I live here and I love it. I've offered thoughtful, strategic advice to the mayor on countless occasions. And I'm confident that our residents recognize my efforts as I was reelected last month with the most votes of any council member. Councilman Murphythian, I absolutely know the strength of your moral compass and that you would not nominate or vote for anybody on the basis of friendship. I know that. I've heard enough of you from the past 3 years to know that, and I admire that. And in fact, if things were different, I'd be nominating you. And because integrity, honesty, and fairness are my true north as well. Given that, I'm dismayed and disappointed by backroom deals that were set in motion weeks ago regarding this position. And as such, I respectfully decline your heartfelt nomination with deep appreciation for your kind words. They mean the world to me, and I appreciate that. I hope that going forward, we all place the town's interests first and foremost, because we owe that to this town that we all love. And I respectfully request that my response be entered into the minutes in toto. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Okay, does anyone else want to do a second round? Actually, let me say something before we open it up for a second. I will said that we have worked very well over the years together in a number of capacities. I'll also confirm that Ms. Holloway is absolutely correct. I have actually sought her counsel at my own initiative on multiple occasions, and she has always been not just willing, but generous and enthusiastic in giving. So, okay, so if anyone else would like to speak, Mr. Perkins?
Yeah, just in short, I would say that I'm certainly very happy to nominate Councilwoman Logis. And I think that I'm very happy to do it for a lot of reasons. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time saying a lot of things. What I am going to say is I think we have someone who has an incredible amount of business acumen. We have someone who has attended basically every meeting that we have had with the Planning Commission, who is a certified planning commissioner from the state of Virginia. Someone who is, I think, widely viewed in the community as someone who's looked to for their opinions and thoughts about important matters, and someone who certainly I think I can trust in every single individual on this town council and folks in town can completely trust to put Occoquan's best interests at heart. I don't feel that there are people on the council, I think there are others on the council that are super qualified to be in that role as well. And at the same time, I'm very happy to have nominated Jim Lucas.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Ms. Fithian, anything else?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Beginning, anything?
No.
Ms. Lotus? Ms. Holloway?
No, thank you.
Okay. I'll close by saying I think either of these individuals would be excellent in the role. I'm glad, frankly, that all of you have been willing to serve on the council. So with that, let me close the discussion. The only name in nomination now with Ms. Holloway's withdrawal is Ms. Loges. So I'm going to call Ms. Loges' name. Those council members in favor of making her vice mayor, please raise your hand. Anyone who does not raise their hand will be listed as an abstention. So if you are in favor of Ms. Loges as vice mayor, please raise your hand. Okay. Clerk, have you recorded all that? Okay. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Okay, now I would like to ask unanimous consent to congratulations, Ms. Loges, by the way. In the future, you will get to sit at the dais, I think, depending upon how COVID-19 works. I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to add an item to the agenda, and that is the discussion of the signs, banners, and flags, and also move up on the agenda the regular business item, small business relief microgrant program. Without objection, those will both be moved up. Is Ms. Haas still here? Did she leave?
She's outside.
Okay. Yeah, would someone mind getting her, because I'd like to give her an opportunity if she has specific questions to ask them, and we'll try to answer. I want to address this subject without her here, folks, so since it was something she was interested in. Okay, why don't we do this? So why don't we go on to the signs, banners, flag issue for the time being, so we don't keep people. So let me review a little history on this first, because this has gone through a couple of iterations, and I would like, to the extent the clerk can, to capture this sort of as a 1, 2, 3 on the agenda, so this is sort of recorded properly for posterity. The sometime, I believe it was early March, I believe it was sometime in March, it might have been early April, we can look that up. The chairman of the Architectural Review Board came to the town council and said specifically that individuals had expressed concern about a sign or banner war, I'm paraphrasing her now, sign or banner war developing in the historic district. And this is something that we've been hearing complaints about from various quarters for a period of months. And one of the difficulties we had with this is that our ordinance with regard to making distinctions between signs, flags, and banners is somewhat confusing. You have to jump around a bit. It's not sure that everything is covered in some definitions. It appears it is, but it's not absolutely clear. So there was a question about whether or not people could in good faith be out of compliance. Now, I'm going to be real with all of you here. I don't really believe that everyone was making a good faith effort to be in compliance. Okay, that would just be foolish of me to think that. But candidly, they could make the argument that the ordinance was confusing in several locations. So I worked with the ARB chair, who was very, very cooperative on this, and we walked through and put together a revision of the ordinance. Now, this is part of the zoning ordinance. So in order for this to be adopted, it has to be referred to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission has to hold a public hearing on it and then vote on it, vote on a recommendation. Then the town council has to have a public hearing and vote on it. So what we did was we took that document, that draft that the chair of the ARB and I had worked on, and the council formally referred it to the Planning Commission. Right after that, COVID-19 hit, screwed up all the meetings. So that was delayed. Now, in the meantime, I agreed that what I would do is I would write a letter from the mayor to the 2 parties at the time. Now I'm going to tell, and I'll explain this later, now there are actually 3 parties. 2 parties at the time where I would say basically, look, we're getting a lot of complaints about this. Our rules for the architecture, for the historic district are content neutral. So you have to comply with them whether your sign is political, your signs, banners, and flags are political or not. We know these rules can be a little confusing, so we're working on changes that will make them less so. But in the meantime, here are the 3 or 4 things that are relevant, seem to be regulations that seem to be relevant to the activity in which you are engaging. Please make sure you're in compliance with these things. And then I made a particular appeal to one of the parties. The letter was going to both. It was an identical letter addressed to both of them. I made an appeal to one of the parties saying, look, I'm going to make this plea as a personal plea from the mayor. It doesn't have regulatory authority, it doesn't have legal authority. It's a personal plea that you consider, given the environment we're in with COVID-19 and our attempt to try to be a neighborly community, that in fact you consider taking down the signs you have in your 2nd floor windows because they can't be seen from the 1st floor. So they're clearly from the ground level. So they're clearly designed to purposely antagonize your neighbors. So if you could take those down and sort of limit your competing flags and banners to one apiece that faces each other, you're getting your point across, and it shows you're also willing to go with me. So that was a plea. I distributed that letter to the entire town council. It took a while for me to get responses from everyone on the town council, but basically we're fine with the letter. Town council, town attorney had reviewed it as well. And then I got distracted for 2 weeks on something else. I didn't get it out. And then a council member, actually here, the vice mayor at the time, Vice Mayor Savini, asked me had I sent that out yet. I explained no, that I was going to do that. I was actually then hoping with a slight delay that we'd have some opening, and at least the matter would be taken up by the Planning Commission. And that way I could at least point to this being in the works. Well, the COVID-19 stuff continued, and as a result, meetings were still restricted, so I didn't get that. So that didn't happen. So then as I proceeded to put the letter out, the murder of George Floyd occurred, protests started, and the individuals took their signs down and wrote me specifically saying one party saying they were doing so because they feared that they would not be protected in the town in they would be subject to vandalism. So they took the signs down, which resulted in, of course, the letter then being moved. So we had a brief conversation about it at the council meeting, and I said, well, it'd actually be a good time for me to send this out now and say, hey, I know folks, you took these things down, but in the future, if you're planning on putting them up, here are the rules. Before I got that, boom, they're back up again. So now, the planning commission is gonna take this up, start the process at their next meeting. I have redrafted this letter to include another party that has added themselves to this flag war. I also took the letter and I submitted it to a town resident and asked them to take a look at it and tell me if they thought, as a resident who's just getting this, not somebody who's on the council or on the ARB or on the planning commission who knows this, if the letter in any way, shape, or form seemed to be either intimidating or telling people under color of government authority they had to do something, or was in any way unfair. That person actually responded to me today and said, no, this is an excellent letter, you should send it out. In fact, I know one of these parties and I'm gonna try to tell them, look, don't be a jerk, sort of thing. So that's where we stand on this. The short answer to your question, Mr. Dominant, is that yes, there are rules. There are sign, banner, and flag rules that apply to the historic district. They are content neutral. And there are violations of that taking place right now. And I will highlight to you the violations. There's a limitation on the number of flags you can have. You can have 4 flags. Flags also have to be on a pole or otherwise attached in a way that's separate from the building. They, as well as banners, as well as temporary signs, cannot obstruct architectural features. So for example, hanging them over the balustrade, that's not allowed because you're blocking off the finials, they're not called finials, whatever they are. Maybe you know what I'm talking about.
That thing.
The things that are between the top and the bottom of bar.
Balustrade.
Balustrade, right? That's what I thought I had right. Balustrades, you can't block those. Banners have to be attached in 4 corners and they have to be removed off the building. They have to be at least 12 inches off the building. And then signs, these temporary signs and windows can't take up more than 25% of the window space of that facade. So there are 2 people who have multiple violations right now of the 3. The third person actually does technically have a violation because the bunting that they have up technically blocks the balustrade. But again, I expect that bunting to come down in a relatively short period of time. I mean, it is not our practice to, on July 4th, tell everybody when they put up all this stuff, you're violating the historic district rules, because people are putting those up and they're taking them down, generally speaking. I have a neighbor, for example, who has a collection of flags. He puts them out on Veterans Day, he puts them out on July 4th, he puts them out on one other, Memorial Day. Nobody in town is going to say, look, this is a violation of our rules, you got to take those down, because it's 3 times a year to honor the war dead you're doing this. So we don't enforce those sort of things. But technically, if they leave that bunting up for a long period of time, that third party as well is in violation. But their flag is not. And in fact, I think Ms. Fithian felt bad at one point because not just me, but some others had said, you can't really see what your flag says because it's always wrapped around the pole or everything else. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Ms. Fithian said, you should just hang it over the balustrade and, everybody will be able to see it. Well, technically that's not allowed. Now, we're not experts up here on the council. We don't walk around with those rules in our pocket all the time, so we didn't know that. As soon as we informed them, though, they fixed it and they put it on flagpole. So that's where we stand on all of those things. I'm sorry that's sort of a long-winded explanation, but gives you the whole history and where we are. We should unfortunately these things take a while. It will take a while for, do we know what that is?
Resolution.
These things do unfortunately take a while. So we will, once the ordinance gets cleared up, it's clear. If they're still violating, the zoning administrator will send it back. Then they have an opportunity to cure. Then a second violation notice has to go. Then there's a whole court procedure. The fines, the town attorney will tell you this, the judge is gonna it doesn't matter if the thing is out there for 30 days. They're not gonna treat those as 30 separate instances, even our code says that. They're gonna charge you $50 for that, right, Mark? I mean, this is essentially what's gonna happen. So we have had business owners like Terry Quinn when he owned the jewelry shop over there. Terry just decided, hey, you know, that A-frame sign, I like having it out there, it's a cost of doing business. We just kept, you know, paying the fees when we took them to court. So it's possible somebody will do that in this sort of situation. I hope not. I'm actually hoping that the letter, along with some pressure from friends, will convince the most offending parties to at least try to tone it down a little bit and be good neighbors about it. They certainly can't afford, though, to come into compliance with the guidelines, because they're pretty liberal about how much stuff you can have out there. I do expect, by the way, that long flag, I talked to somebody today, I expect that it's just been out there to come down shortly. So, all right, with that, let me turn it to Ms. Fippian, because she asked that this be put on the agenda. And then, Mr. Domenech, if you want to say anything, I'd be glad to give you an opportunity.
Looking at, I think there are a couple more copies on the shelf back there, but the pictures include my own porch, the 7 different photos, and if everyone could just number the pages 1 through 7 so we can refer to a number instead of trying to describe each time. It would be helpful. Oh, you have them at the bottom, Katie, thank you, thank you. It would be helpful if we could look at these examples, and if someone either on the ARB, Planning Commission, Council, anyone in the audience knows of a violation, if they could say
Okay, I can do that right.
what it is. Can you do that?
Yeah, I can do that
Okay,
right.
great.
The ARB chairs, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, the ARB chairs also still here.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know if she wants to tackle this, but do you want to, Brenda, or do you want me just to run through it and you tell me if I get something wrong? I mean, I've been neck deep in this stuff for
Yeah, you have
a
that.
week and a half, so I got it memorized.
I can answer questions. Okay, I'm just gotta look at it, okay?
Okay, so let me just run through it quickly. So Ms. Fitty and I have talked about this. So these temporary signs like this, so these are actually, when the rules are clarified, it'll be clear that you can't actually do this because they are covering an architectural feature. But if she were to put these on stakes, for example, and put them out in the yard, they would be fine. Now, there is a rule that these temporary signs can only be up for a certain amount of time. The way the rule that's going to the plan, that is part of the planning commission is now, you can, however, then basically re-up, but it has to be a different sign. So that doesn't mean, a different content sign, it just means a different sign. So Cindy could, for example, have this out in the yard, and I can't remember off the top of my head what the time period is, but let's say it's 45 days. She could have this on a stake in the yard for 45 days, take it down for a couple days, put another one up later that's 45 days. Now, this is not something that ARB members, or I think planning commission members, or council members, or residents generally are big fans of, but it also doesn't happen that often. So it's not the kind of thing that's typically problematic.
Question, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor. So if I took down my hanging baskets of flowers and hung these signs from those hooks
Yeah,
up
then
there where it's not covering anything, that would be okay?
No, because then I think they constitute banners, but we'd have to check that out. They might constitute banners. But I mean, the point on these things, the hope, and I know I'm not speaking for everybody when I say this, but the hope is to actually help people to get to yes. In other words, something they want to do, help them figure out a way to comply with the rules. So I will work with you, or Brenda, or somebody will work with you to figure out a way to make these, do with these what you want in the rules. On page 2, these banners here, Brenda and I talked about this before, they're in violation too, because they have to be attached at all 4 corners, and they have to be away from the building, I think it is 12 inches. So those are in violation. Okay, there are multiple violations. They may even have a size violation. The size, I think, is 4 by 4 is what you're allowed, and I don't know what these are, but they are covering architectural features as well. These are not flags, these are banners. They're also not attached in the proper way, so those would be violations. The flags, there is a violation of flags just in that this individual has too many. There's only 4, and again, it doesn't matter. On page 4, same problem with
Mr.
that.
Mayor, I'm seeing what's there on page 3. Are you saying that the maximum square footage, I didn't kind of understand what you said. But
Yeah, I'm sorry.
maximum
So the
square
first part
footage-
was, I can't tell how big these are, but I think the banner restriction is 4 by 4, and these look to me, I mean, again, It's hard to tell scale, but they could be more than 60 square feet. You know, if they
You
are.
are correct, 404 is the right, is the number.
Same problem here on page 4. Now page 5, this is the one where I just asked them to be a good neighbor about. This is an example of if these signs take up more than 25% of all the window space on that side of the building, then it would be a violation. I mean, just eyeballing it, I don't think they do.
Of the building or of
No,
the
that
space that
side.
that particular
No, that's.
owner or renter has?
No, it's the building. So
It's the
that
whole building, okay, even if it's a different person
Yeah,
on
it's
every
not
floor?
it's not the facade, it's the, I'm sorry, it's not the whole building, it's that facade, that side, basically. But again, these are the ones that I asked, just, I mean, nobody can see these except the people across the street, but they look at them every morning. And then 6, this is what I was mentioning earlier, is technically this bunting, I think, right? Brenda, we haven't discussed this before because it's relatively new, but I think technically this bunting is in violation because it blocks the balustrade. But again, I expect that this would probably only be up for, the extended July 4th holiday. So again, typically it's something that we would wait for it to be up for a while before we say anything about it. 7, so this is the same as with the other ones. Banners have to be attached at 4 corners. I mean, if they're flags, they gotta be on a pole, or there's one other way you can do it. And this lower one is blocking the balustrade, so that's also. Yeah.
Mayor, on this number 7, I actually just noticed this, on the lower level window, there's a flag hanging on the inside, how does that?
Yeah, I think that is allowed because that's.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's an interior thing, and again, I think, the flags don't count against I don't think interior flags count against the 25% window, facade blockage, you understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah, I think that's the case, so, but I'd have to look at it, that's the first one I'm noticing.
I'm wondering if because I know that there's issues if they have a sign that's, for example, that's inside, but it's a neon sign that's not allowed,
Right.
that isn't allowed, so I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I'd have to double check with this, I mean, it certainly doesn't meet the sign, restriction, doesn't violate the sign restriction, in other words, so I don't know, I mean, my guess is it would, I don't see that. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, could you please share with the council and the town staff and attendees what you shared with me on the phone when I asked if there could be a limit to, say, just pick a number, 60 days prior to an election for political support signs, that was it a state or federal law that prohibits that?
So I'll ask Mr. Krim to correct me if I'm wrong, but our code actually used to have something in it that said something to the effect of 45 days prior to an election, 15 days after. I think it was during Ms. Quist's term as mayor, there was a court decision that basically said that's violates the First Amendment because it's content specific.
That's correct, the federal court decision on that.
Federal? So people can have up campaign signs 12 months a year if they want, correct?
Yeah. And then
Right, and then there was the more recent decision in the Town of Gilbert case, which said that you can't have content-based restrictions on signs at all. So you have to treat political signs just like every other sign.
So, you know, Ms. Fithian, that in discussions with one of the parties that, on this, people also then have a constitutional right to be pissed off at you for being a jerk all year round. So,
Okay.
that's, well, I mean, I say this not really in jest, because what happens, you know this, but what happens is people then get frustrated that people are mad at them about having these things up, because they state obviously that it is protected First Amendment speech, but, you know, then people are also protected in being able to be mad at you if you're doing that, and it's ugly or unattractive or whatever. Ms. Fithian, did you have anything else on that?
No, if there's anyone on the council or in the
Okay,
audience
so-
who wants to say anything else?
Let me do that, let me ask if any council members start with Ms. Piana, anything?
Oh, I do have something, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll
I
get
do.
back, I'll get back. Ms. Piana? No? Mr. Perkins? Ms. Williams? Ms. Holler?
No, thank you.
Ms. Vivian, you have the last word before we call Mr. Thomas.
Okay, so what's in the rules and regulations now is that, for instance, the letter that you referenced and you heard back from the person or persons you sent it out to and they said, go. If that's sent out to all of us who are not abiding by the rules right now, is that a warning and then we have so many days to rectify, and then if we don't by the warning date, then, you know, the chief comes and gets us, or what happens?
No, so this is not a warning at all. This is the mayor deciding in the absence, the mayor trying to take action in the absence of the ordinance being clear and us needing some time to clarify it so that it then can be adequately enforced. This is the mayor trying to say to folks, look, you're in violation. We know you'd love to be in compliance. Please do that. So we don't have to go, yeah. So, and the additional appeal is the good neighbor appeal, which is one that has no, no legal basis whatsoever, because there's no obligation if they do this. And in fact, if you remember the letter specifically says, look, you have no obligation to do this, okay? I mean, this is simply a personal plea for you to try to be good neighbors, particularly with all the stuff we have going on right now.
Okay.
So, and that will go out by the end of the week, since I heard from the person.
And then if there's no compliance, then what happens?
When there's no compliance and the ordinance is clarified so that there's no ambiguity on these points,
Mhm.
then it goes to the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator cites them for the violations. And that's why I'm just, to the public, I want to make sure they understand that we are trying to work on this. These sorts of violations, though, always take a while to enforce because it's got to go to a zoning administrator. Then the other party gets an opportunity, X number of days in which to cure it, or they can challenge it. And if they don't cure it, they get a second notice before we can take them to court. Then when we take them to court, they're gonna get fined $50. So we need to decide, over time but most of the time, the idea of taking people to court, that gets the thing taken care of for the most part. But I like to think that most people, once they are advised of compliance, will make a good faith effort to comply.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else, Mr. Dominic, do you want to say? Am I always mispronouncing your last name, by the way? I've been knowing you for years now, Dominic. Okay. Always feel that.
Just thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, members of the town council, for considering this. You know what happens, there's a tendency for people to imitate.
Yep.
They see something happening and they say, well, if they're doing it, I guess it's okay for me to do it. And I just don't want Occoquan to become the quilt now.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Haas, so we wanted to, before we started talking specifically about this, wanted to give you an opportunity just for 3 minutes again. If you had specific questions that you wanted us to try to address in our comments, stuff about the guild, in your, whatever questions you might have that are specifically about the guild itself, we probably don't have the answer to. We'll try.
I've submitted my specific requests or questions in emails, some of which have been responded to, others of which are still pending.
Okay, the ones that are pending, do you know off the top of your head what those are?
No, not off the top of my head right now, but I do have some new questions.
Okay.
Based on review of the packet for tonight and the previous minutes, I noticed that the town, so you guys have received $94,000.
Have we received it yet?
Well,
Okay,
you
yeah.
are supposed to
Yeah.
receive $94,000.
Yeah, from the county, right,
From Prince William County.
correct.
I'm curious to know if you guys know what that number is based on, how that number was reached.
Yeah,
Let me
the
just
county-
ask my questions before you respond.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, good.
Having a solid understanding as to where that number comes from should lead your decision-making process as to where that dollar amount goes to. There is a tradition in this town to put the shops before the residents. I've seen it over and over and over again in the past 5 years I've been back. And that's really my biggest red alarm here. And then there was another issue that I saw in the minutes where I think some $6,000 or $6,000 and some change has been earmarked for the town itself and the town's use. And I would really like to know, and I know that there are other residents who would really like to know what that dollar amount is going for specifically. And one of the things that I personally think would be a good idea would be the infrastructure in place here going forward with COVID to have these meetings the ability for them to be live on social media, for example, so that residents can sit at home and see the activities that are going on, which are very important. And, you know, in most cases in Northern Virginia, I grew up here, was born and raised here, it's a grind. And part of the reason why I started my business is because I could help people have pets and still meet these extraordinary work cultures. And so part of the reason why you guys don't seem to have the public involvement of the residents is because they're out there working, right? So if you make it, you take that dollar amount that you're earmarking for the town itself to spend, the first response, I think, needs to be shoring up the system so that people like Amy Barnes, for example, who is probably one of our most immunocompromised individuals in town, the only reason she's not here is because of that, so that she can actually actively participate in her town government.
Okay, thank you. Some quick responses. The county distributed this based on population. This is what they were required to do, I believe. All of it goes to the town for COVID-19 related expenses. So things like extra sanitation, the supplies, extra cleaning of the bathrooms, a bunch of different things. The 6,000 number you're getting is simply a number that the town staff had reported at one moment in time. They had that many expenses already accounted for. So we were under no obligation to do a grant of any sort to the town businesses. The council made a decision, and the county confirmed that we were allowed to do this. The council made a unanimous decision to allocate $30,000 of that money to any businesses that were eligible under the county criteria. So that's what we are trying to do. And the proposal that was put forward by the staff, which was 2 or 3 meetings ago, was pretty straightforward, that it was going to be an equal distribution to anybody who applied and met the criteria. And the town attorney advised us that we could not do that directly under the law, suggested that we do it through the business guild as the agency transfer, as a transfer agency for the
Can I make a
funds.
correction there?
Yes.
It is referred to by themselves as the Merchants Guild,
Right, so
not the Business Guild.
Yeah, so I apologize that I get that wrong periodically. They've changed names multiple times. Laverne Carson called it the Merchants Guild, and it was only open to by invitation until it went down to 6 members. And the Occoquan Merchants Association was much, much larger, which was the original organization. When the Occoquan Merchants Association folded, Ms. Carson invited everyone into it and started calling it the Business Guild. That's the history there. That's why I continue to call it the Business Guild, even though now I believe they're calling it again the Merchants Guild. We will have a lot more than $6,000 in expenses, and in fact, my guess is that we could use up the whole $90,000 ourselves directly for town expenses and not give a dime to the businesses if we didn't want to. I don't agree, I'm just going to say, I don't agree with the comment that we have advocated on behalf of the businesses to the exclusion or to the detriment of the townspeople, because in fact, that has been the resounding response of townspeople in terms of what they want us to do, is they want us to do things that increase events down here, that improve the conditions for businesses down here, and the overwhelming majority have consistently said to us that in the absence of those businesses, we don't have a town. We end up just being a subdivision and not a particularly large one when we're next to LRPRA.
What is that based on?
No, I'm sorry. I've given you the opportunity to speak, but I'm just, now we're going to address this issue. So, and quite candidly, I'm also going to say, I have a lot of contact with residents, and I know some of the other council members do too. So there are a lot of residents that are contacting us all the time about any number of things. We have a significant number that volunteer for a bunch of things. So we do have a large number of residents who are in touch with us. The live meeting coverage suggestion, I think, is an interesting one. I mean, that's one I think we should consider. I don't know that the COVID-19, the problem with the COVID-19 money on this is it's not recurring funds. So it might be able to help us with some infrastructure, which I think was your recommendation, that we do it for the infrastructure. I can tell you the problem for some other jurisdictions, for example, I've talked with the mayor of Dumfries about this, is they do theirs on YouTube. Now, they tried to do this sort of themselves, and it just became such a hassle for the staff, they ended up hiring somebody to do it. So you do end up having to budget and hire for it. The idea of sort of doing it on Facebook and getting volunteers to do it, it just doesn't work long-term for governmental entities. You have to professionalize it in some way if you're gonna do it right. So that's certainly something that we can consider. So, okay, so Ms. Little, do you want to come forward since we have this item on the agenda and just make sure we touch on this? If I understand what we're doing with regard to this, the original proposal, or the original document that was in front of the town council 3 meetings or so before, that excluded home businesses was based on the criteria that the county had at that time.
Correct.
And the second, I do want to say, I do feel bad that you missed that first round of the county, because the county did, I mean, they really went, and we tried to not only promote their program, but also make sure people understood that they could apply for that and for the towns. And the county, the reason the county did a second tranche was because they were undersubscribed. And in fact, today, if you go on, you will see they're saying, please subscribe, because we have more money, because they allocated a pool. And they're not doing it like we did, where we say, hey, I mean, if 10 people, got $30,000, if 30 people apply, they're all getting $1,000. If 10 apply, they're all getting $3,000. So that's not the way the county is doing it. They have a pool that they're allocating out on all sorts of other calculations, which we just can't do. So it is unfortunate that you missed that one, but as my understanding, you'll be eligible for ours and you're eligible for their second round. And the two do not cancel each other out in any way, shape, or form. You're not allowed to take into account whether or not a person receives one or the other in making the determination. So you had decided, you had informed us, Ms. Little, that the county had changed their criteria with the second tranche.
Correct.
To allow home-based businesses, and our intent all along was to mirror the county
Correct.
on those criteria. So that's all
That's all I'm requesting the council tonight.
okay. All right, so let's get a motion a second on the table, and then we can do discussion. Does someone want to make this motion?
I move to approve an amendment to the Small Business Relief and Micro Grant Program guidelines to include home-based businesses as eligible if they meet all other requirements.
Okay,
Second.
Second by Ms. Fithian. Any discussion? Let's start with Ms. Logan. Anything? Okay, Ms. Holloway.
No, thank you.
Ms. Fithian.
No thanks.
Ms. Bianchi.
No, Mr.
Perkins. Okay. Been moved and seconded. There's no more discussion. All those in favor, please so indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, so I think, as I understand it, Julie, you also extended the deadline on this.
I did, to July 15th.
Do we need to extend it any further, do you think?
That's an extra week. I'll get the note out tonight. Word comes fast, but I will send out another merchant's email tonight. And I think the 15th should be sufficient.
I'm gonna ask the council to indulge me. Oh yeah, sorry, Ms. Holloway.
How many do we have applicants in the first round?
11, okay.
Thank you.
If you'll indulge me, Ms. Haas, you missed the first one at the county. What do you think of that? Is the 15th enough time or not? No.
I think that, the 15th is sufficient considering that these business owners need the money.
Okay.
So the sooner they get it, the better.
So you think it gives them enough time?
As long as everybody hears about it.
Okay. So that leads to my second question then. Do we, I mean, I was not originally in favor of this because I thought it's just gonna eat into it, but do we need to mail everybody with a business license on this? And the problem with that, of course, is we'd have to exclude people who are, the problem is when you do that, is there are people who then assume they're eligible who might not be eligible, and it means you end up spending the time trying to figure out ahead of time if people are eligible. That's what I'm concerned about, is that that will happen.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, I'm going with you perfectly. Yeah.
do you feel like you have the ability to contact all of these individuals successfully?
A mailing is not a bad idea, but it does eat into the,
But I mean, forgive me, I mean from other ways. I mean, such as, an email, et cetera, et cetera.
I have had an offer from a council member to start calling people, so that is an option.
I'd be happy to call people as well.
Ms. Holloway.
How have we communicated is to date?
Today, it's, been on, the website.
The newsletter.
The newsletter and, personal email, as well as being, spread back via word of mouth at the guild meeting, of course.
Well, and also, by personal email, you mean that business distribution list you have?
Yes.
That, cause I saw that goes to 500, how many people do it go to? Well, no, that doesn't go to 500, that's a
No,
different thing.
that goes to owners of businesses
Right, okay.
and council.
Did you put it on
Ms.
social?
No, did not put it on social.
Ms. Vivian?
Did have most of the business owners, both home-based businesses and brick and mortar, separate businesses, signed up for the text alerts, or was that just residents? That,
You know, the businesses go to text me.
So-
Everybody wants to be on there, can be on there, and I wouldn't say most of them, no.
not most of them?
Some, but not most.
Ms. Peony, do you have anything?
No, I just think of, well, yes, sorry. I think about the mailing piece, the pros and cons, and I'm just not sure where you stand on, will it reach the intended audience, and will that be essentially a return on investment? Is that something that will?
It's 103 businesses, I don't think it'll really cost that much to do a mailing, we could have it out tomorrow.
Is it gonna be any more effective than the steps you've already taken?
I couldn't say. I do know that some merchants don't read their email, so.
So, you know, I don't, I really don't mean to be a jerk about this, but this is, so, but I'll tell you, I'm a little conflicted on this, because the fewer people that apply, the more money the people who applied and are eligible get. And there's part of me that is a little bit concerned that when, you know, if people are not invested enough in the community to read the newsletter, in the business community, to read the newsletter, to read the things you specifically target the business with, the business community with, to, you know, I mean, we've sent out, but, you know, I've done my e-thing on it as well multiple times. You know, if we delay the program further, and I know you're not suggesting that, but for example, if Ms. Haas had said, yeah, you should extend it to the 25th, my initial reaction would be, yeah, that gives me more time, but then when I would think about it, I'd think, well, what that's gonna do is these folks are really not,
They need the money now.
yeah, people really need the money now, and the ones who aren't processing stuff are holding it up from the others, which I think was Ms. Haas's point on this about the 15th. And and frankly, it dilutes the pool more.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I was wondering if, Liz, if you wanted to say anything, since you have a business and
Wait,
you're the previous
okay,
mayor.
let me decide whether or not I'm gonna ask Liz first. I appreciate that, but let me get to the other council members first.
Okay.
Ms. Rogers, did you have anything?
Yes, thank you. So, when did the application start?
So that's a question. The applications coming in, or?
When did you open up the applications? for people?
Monday last, so whatever that date was.
So if we ended, we're about halfway through then.
Yeah.
We were to end it the following week. Yeah, I do think, you know, to Mayor Porter's point, I agree with, like, we do run that balance, get the word out, done so much to get the word out. I don't know if there is one last ditch thing that's done, maybe it's done tonight or tomorrow morning, but then that would be it. I think a mailing, you know, to do a mailing, I'm not sure what that would bear, if that would, if it's worth the expense.
Okay, any other council members? Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, the part about the mailing is, I think it would by default have to then extend, because you put it in the mail, then you have however many days you expect it to receive, and then, you know, hoping people check their mail. I think that would be the consequence of the actual impact of the mailer.
Okay, so any other council comments? Okay, now I am gonna allow people, one comment from the floor for anybody who wants to make them, including Ms. Quist, who I invited to the meeting tonight for a variety of reasons. Is there anything you would like to say on this?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But thank you.
Ms. Howe, I cut you off earlier when you wanted to say something when I was in the middle of one of my soliloquies, so what was it you wanted to ask about?
You had quite a lot to say about your finger on the pulse of the residents of this community, but that's what you said counters
Well, I don't,
what my experience is. with the residents and their opinions. So I'm wondering what your data is based on.
So I wasn't saying I have my pulse on my finger on the pulse of the community. I'm saying that we hear from members of the community all the time, and not just me. So the overwhelming number that we have heard from, that is what I get. That's what
That they all want the money they want everything to be invested in the shops.
No,
and tourism.
that they are supportive of, no. I mean, this is a problem with doing it back and forth like this, that is not what I said. Nobody has represented to me that they want all the money invested in the shops. No, it's that they have been supportive of the efforts we have made, not just to add events and increase the number of people in town or do other things that improve the quality of life in town, but also improve the conditions for merchants, because they know that the business community, the taxes they pay, actually help keep their taxes lower. And if we did not have this business community, we wouldn't be a town. So I am absolutely not saying that they want all the money invested in the business community. And quite frankly, if you looked at historically what we have spent money on, that has not been it. I mean, the money has gone to road improvements and other things outside of the historic business district. I mean, we spent $90-some thousand alone on one street up here. So, you know, if you look at our policing, if you look at other things, that bulk of that policing, not issues that are happening down here, it's elsewhere in the community. And we get compliments about the police and their activity in those parts of the community all the time. So, I mean, we do have a specific responsibility for some of the physical infrastructure that's in the historic district. That obviously more directly benefits the merchants, but it's also part of living in a town. If you want a historic district with gas lights and brick sidewalks, well, it's not just the merchants that are getting that benefit. Anyone else? Our tax rate would be much higher, folks, if we did not have the business community. Mr. Perkins, you wanted to say something?
No, I just wanted just to say quickly, first of all, Ms. Little, what's your role?
Sorry?
What is your role in town?
I'm the events and community development director.
Community Development Director. And do we have before your time, do we have a full-time Community Development Director?
No.
We did not. Okay, just wanted to check on that. And then additionally, I just wanted to say, like, I actually thought the process that we've had here in terms of the process to provide this $30,000 out of the $94,000, I think it's something that we wanted to do both for brick and mortar businesses and for home businesses to be able to do it as quickly as possible, to recognize the importance of getting into folks' pocket. And I think that we reacted as a council pretty quickly, and I think we were pretty prideful of doing that. So I think that's definitely a good thing. At the same time, I think we're all interested we've had some of the dollars that have already been used in ways to make Occoquan safe during this time, and also to prepare to be safe moving forward. So I guess what I would say is that I'm actually I'm proud of it, and I think that we are all proud of voting that way and of trying to move that money forward as quickly as possible, right? We want to get it in the hands of people who need it, and we want to spend money to make town safe and safe moving forward in situations like this that occur. So I just wanted to kind of say that, and yeah, there you go.
Okay, any other councilman? Ms. Bienia, Ms. Fithian, Ms. Loges, Ms. Holloway, any other members of the public who haven't spoken? Okay, well, this has been moved and seconded and passed, so thank you very much, Ms. Little. I think you've done an excellent job on this program. I think it seems to be the consensus of the council that we're not going to do the mailing, is that correct? Does anybody want to do the mailing? Ms. Fithian.
I was gonna bring up the social media. I wasn't responding to the mailing.
Whatever it is.
I think it's worth putting on social media unless there's some reason not to.
Yeah, do you have any objection to that as well?
Not really.
If you do, say something. You seem hesitant.
I'm using social media as more of a tourism-based platform. I can put it on the government page on Facebook.
Yeah, please.
I would encourage you to do that, because tourism is indeed important, and we know that, but so is Ms. Haas's point about our businesses needing it. I think you should use every tool short of the mailing because of the delay. I agree with Councilmember Logan on that, and so I think social media is a good option. And should you decide to do a phone tree, please because I think several of us would be willing to actually reach out and check a box. So
Thank you, I appreciate
talk to
that.
the person.
Even if someone's not home, just leaving a message with a heads up.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, we'll move forward now with the
Except
rest
someone's
of
not
the
home, not home phone.
regular agenda. The first is the minutes for the meeting of May 6th. Is there a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Perkins, is there a second? Second by Ms. Loges, any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Okay, next is the minutes of the meeting of May 26th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve those minutes as written?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Holloway, is there a
Second.
Second by Ms.
No, she beat me to it.
Yes, Ms. Holloway.
Just another, every time we meet, I'm gonna do this. Katie, excellent job on the list.
Yeah, they did.
It's so refreshing having seen so many covered meetings. They're fabulous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Here, here.
Thank you. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll go on reports. I'm going to do my report. I've been working with residents off of West Locust Street with regard to a gas light problem they've been having for some time. This resulted in a lot of going around with Washington Gas, who was refusing to turn over the information to anyone but the account holder, and of course they wouldn't tell us who the account holder was, and nobody on in that particular HOA and on that street knew who the account holder was. Well, it turns out they did find out ultimately that it is it's not an actual gas light, it is a bulb issue, and so they are taking care of replacing the bulb themselves. At the request of some residents in town off of Washington Street, at the corner of Washington and West Locust Street, contacted the zoning administrator regarding 104 West Locust Street, which is a house that you might remember others have brought up. Appears to be abandoned. It has the ladders up against it and the windows open on the second floor. So the members of that community, they've done everything they could through the HOA, so they've come and asked the town if we could do something about it. So I ended up speaking with the town attorney and the zoning administrator, and the individual does apparently live in Florida, is not taking care of the structure. Town attorney had some recommendations. The zoning administrator actually, as soon as he got back from vacation, has gone down there and actually is citing him for some violations. And those violations, if they're not remedied, will ultimately result in us probably having to bring the building official in and seeing if condemnation or nuisance actions are warranted. But those the people in that community are grateful for that. The zoning administrator also has indicated that he is citing 119 Washington Street. You know the place I'm talking about?
Of course.
Yeah, because he said he just, and his is looking at that, yeah, that it's, well, it's just out of control. And so he's decided those are violations that he needs to take action on. We already talked about the stuff we're trying to do on the banners and signs. We also had an issue with regard to some tree trimming in town. As you know, we had Pat Lynn had asked us to trim the trees along these buildings here, which she owns, because they were damaging the trees. So the staff had a tree trimmer come in and take care of that. In the process, the tree trimmer also apparently met with staff in prior weeks, identified through various public areas in town where the trees were either blocking pedestrian sidewalks or some other things that were potentially dangerous. And this person had a list, so when they were in here doing the trees in front of Pat's building, they also went over to personally yours, and in looking at, they had planned to do some work on that tree. They went in, they asked the shop owner there, Betsy, about it, and there was some confusion about who owned the building. So the person ended up actually thinking they had permission to do this, started to cut the limbs, and then of course the owner was concerned about that. So the owner asked to meet with me. We met. The owner was very, very cooperative about this. Her only concern is that the tree survived. Chief Lynn has assured me that the person who did the work for the town is a bonded tree service person and an arborist. He cut the tree in accordance with what would be in its best interest. He has some additional recommendations about preserving the tree, and the owner was actually interested in hearing those. So what I've agreed to do after consultation with the town attorney is we're gonna ask the contractor actually to just give us a staff report on the work that was done, documenting the condition of the tree as well, and recommendations for the future health of the tree, which include, I think, cutting a vine. And because the owner may implement those changes herself. So that I think will have a positive resolution. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is a sensitive issue that the town attorney and I have discussed. There has been some information circulating about some individuals in town who allegedly have COVID-19. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because is to caution staff and council members about engaging in these conversations. Some of the information that's been circulated, including in writing, has enough identifying information in it to be able to identify who those individuals are. And this is a problem, getting involved in these discussions, because beyond just common sense ethics about this or common sense respecting people's privacy, there is legal liability that can attach to these sort of things very, very easily. If someone says or repeats falsely that someone has a disease like COVID-19, repeating information like that or saying things about diseases like that that are untrue is one of the very few circumstances that constitutes per se defamation. Okay, and that means the person does not need to prove damages in order to get a recovery on these things. So it's really, so hearing from someone through the rumor mill or secondhand that someone has COVID-19 in town and passing it along, or putting it on social media, or outing in some indirect way is totally inappropriate conduct. And with the staff and council members, you not only subject yourselves to potential liability for that, but you potentially subject the town to liability for that. Okay, so those of you who have been involved in this response effort, whether as volunteers or as medical support staff, know the privacy issues associated with this. Also know how contract tracers work and what they're doing when someone's tested currently. That information goes directly to the health department. The health department has a contract tracing system. I've been a part of that. These are designed to protect the privacy of these individuals and for the contract tracers and others to take the steps necessary to help the community. There is a reason that in the public information that's distributed right now, there is an asterisk next to the Occoquan zip code. And that is because the case number is so small that it's very easy to identify, stigmatize the individuals who might have this. So this is a plea after discussing with the town attorney for staff and council members to be very, very cautious about participating in those sort of discussions, particularly if you don't know the facts yourself from the individuals that have it. Hearsay, backing up hearsay, in other words, somebody else telling you that your secondhand information is accurate, it's not that individual, does not cure that hearsay problem in terms of defaming someone. So please be very, very cautious. There is always going to be pressure on elected leaders to reveal, or staff to reveal that source of information. Please do your best not to get sucked into that. It's inappropriate behavior and potentially subjects us to legal liability. Okay, that's it for my report. We'll go next to Mr. Perkins.
The only thing I just wanted to offer is I think this last Friday night, I just want to say a particular thank you to the Occoquan Police Department who volunteered. Their part of their Friday night, was it not?
Thursday night.
Thursday night, yeah. So part of their Thursday night to trim up the front of town with the herbs and weeds. It isn't even Occoquan owned area or designated to take care of. So just wanted to thank you very much for that. That's just kind of one indicator of my time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Ms. Deanne. Okay, it's 50.
Is it appropriate during council member reports to ask a question?
Sure.
And if it should be directed to town manager on behalf of town staff, should I save it for town manager's report? Or do
You
it
can
now?
mention it now, we can
Okay.
decide if it should be.
Okay. welcome back, Kathy. We're all very sorry for the loss of your dad, and you've been in our thoughts and prayers. I'm wondering if you or anyone else on the staff knows if if there's been any progress on designing the sign for the kayak and canoe launch ramp and or the free public parking sign at the intersection of Washington and Mill.
There has been no design work since I've been away. I need to, obviously, since I've been away for 3 weeks, get back in touch with what's going on, but to my knowledge, no.
Okay. And on a walk the other night, I was noticing that, it's great that signs are up down there where the kayak and canoe launch ramp are. I'm wondering if we had talked about this in the past, Mr. Mayor, or not, regarding which logo to use, because it seems like for something like the kayak and canoe launch ramp, the new tourism logo or whatever we're calling it would be especially appropriate, but it's the old one that was the town seal that was used. So do we have a guideline for when we use which logo?
Do we? Yeah.
My understanding is because it's an official, we're actually laying down the guidelines for an official, town, like we have the same type of sign in Mandy Davis Park and I believe in Riverville Park as well. Since it's an official sign providing official town policy, that's not so much a tourist thing, that is really kind of the official town guideline for the use of a town facility.
So then it would be more like we would use the town seal on an official sign, but putting things out like that Julie might put out about advertising that it's open and please come enjoy lunch and go on a kayak.
Would be the new logo.
That would be the new logo, okay?
And on the sign that you were referencing before that we're thinking about for the kayak ramping area would be the new logo as well.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Vivian, you had your hand up, or sorry, Ms. Holly, you had your hand up.
Some of that is mentioned in the brand guidelines that we wrote when the logo was developed, and I know Julie is well aware of using those as well, but I agree, I think we should definitely have it on the sign that we're talking about for the main brand. But other than that, you covered everything, thank you.
And a PS, I would like the wording and design of that kayak and canoe launch ramp to come before council before it's actually ordered.
Sure. Anything else, Ms. Vivian? Ms. Lodi?
Just a couple quick things, thank you. I wanted to thank Chief Lynn, did a ride along with, she to get a orientation around town, and I appreciate that. I also want to thank, several residents, some of whom are here, have been giving feedback on the new noise ordinance that we're working on with the planning commission, and that's been great, making sure that we get that feedback, has been extremely helpful, so thank you for that. And I also want to thank Councilmember Holloway for meeting about town communications, and social media, which is coming up again tonight, so it's definitely something that's top of mind, so thank you for that meeting. That's all.
Okay, Ms. Holloway.
A couple things, I have resigned from the ARB, I've enjoyed my 3 years on that, Brenda, thank you for your partnership on that. But I know, Mr. Mayor, you put that out for everybody, but I wanted to announce it publicly as well. I've also stepped down from the ASAP board, chief of, boy, that's been fun. So, that's the alcohol safety, program, drunk driving people, as from the board member on that, so it's just a time issue. The last thing is just a note, and you may already know this, but on July 25th, 26th, it's the Pokemon Go Fest nationally. And we will be inundated. They're doing it virtually for the first time ever, but they're also doing it in person.
What does virtually mean?
You can buy a ticket and actually participate virtually for the first time versus going to the places, but we will have a lot. It's the annual national, came up in our work thing the other day. I wanted to pass that on.
Oh gosh, that's the same day that Shelley Tackett's coming, right?
That's
Or is that issue the 20th?
That's our first concert in the
Her
park,
first-
yes.
You're gonna come and hear her.
So, anyway, just FYI to everybody that will be affected by the Pokemon orders. It's hard enough to park right now on the weekends here. That weekend should be a nightmare. That's all, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll go to the town attorney's report.
congratulations to all of you, new and returning council members. I would look forward to having an opportunity to have a little bit of a presentation with you regarding what my office does and what we don't do. At some point, I think we've been getting pretty long tonight, but maybe we can find another time to do that.
Mr. Grimm, how long would you like to take for something like that?
It's at least half an hour.
Oh, okay, then we should do it another time. That's definitely, how about we plan to put, I was gonna say we could add an item to the agenda for tonight, but why don't we do that at the August meeting, unless you can make the July work session. We'll schedule it.
I wanted to let you know, what matters I've been working on, recently. Of course, COVID-19 compliance is an issue that keeps coming up. The CARES Act funding, you've already, acted on that, was actively involved in drafting the criteria. We've also been working on the police use of force and duty to intervene policies. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, but Versa, which is our insurance company, or the insurance pool of local government, sent out a draft duty to intervene policy general order for police forces to all of their clients. And I tweaked that a little bit and worked with the chief to get a general order on duty to intervene. In a nutshell, that requires that any law enforcement officer who sees another law enforcement officer violating any law or rule will have to intervene, regardless of whether they're from the same or a different agency, and regardless of whether the other misbehaving law enforcement officer is a subordinate or a superior. I think that's one of the lessons we learned from the George Floyd situation. Stand ready to answer your questions.
Questions for town attorney? Okay, seeing none, moving on, thank you, sir. Building officials report is being included, as has the town engineer's report. Any questions about any of those? Staff? Okay, same is true as the zoning administrator, any questions for staff on the report? Okay, town treasurer, do you want to say anything, town treasurer, or the report is pretty straightforward? We're coming to the close, but when do you think you'll be able to get us preliminary numbers for June 30th? Will you be able to get them by the first?
Do you need them? Do you need them sooner than you would normally have them?
Well, can you get them to us the first meeting in August?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure. Sometimes the year end takes longer, so, okay.
Just a caveat that I might need to follow up with the direction the following, maybe at the work session, but I don't see a reason why the first meeting in August, there shouldn't be there shouldn't be an issue with that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do you want to highlight anything at all, or discuss anything at all? You don't have to feel compelled to.
No,
Okay.
I hope you like the changes made to the report.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, just let me know. Trying to work on collections.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Next is the chief of police. Chief.
So you have no report, the only thing I will update everybody on is the 2 incidents we had over the weekend. We have been following up with that, and I can say that the individuals involved in those are all doing well, so that's what I can say with that.
Okay, I think within one of your reports that the chief has been working with some residents on a variety of police issues. Spent a lot of time with them, and they've actually sent me notes of appreciation for the work that he and his staff have been doing with the community and with the neighbors. So thank you for that, chief. Let me ask, does anyone have any questions for Chief? Ms. Howell?
I have a question, just an accolade, thank you for your officers' professionalism this weekend in those 2 incidents. We're a small town, I don't expect the kind of professionalism we get from you guys on a daily basis. I'm so grateful to you guys and also for your response and thoughtful response to the George Floyd situation. You personally responding to us, though you have, and publicly and personally. You set an example for your staff and your entire team, you and Sergeant Foreman, I don't know if he's going in or not.
He had an emergency, yes.
Then thank you for that. Kudos, and we appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Here, here.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Williams, anything?
Just to echo what Councilmember Humphrey said. Thank you,
Ms.
Brian.
Ms. Whitney?
I'm good, you're good.
Again, just to echo what everybody said, please.
And just from a communication standpoint, I just wanted to point out how helpful I think that it is, that when we have something of particular interest or importance that happens, looking at the time that you sent those emails to us, at least one of them was at a very, very early hour. And I really, I think we all probably appreciate the fact that in those type of situations, letting us know immediately so we can answer questions. So very good, and obviously we agree with everything that council always said.
Now, you're a consistent source of compliment for the members of the community, chief, so.
Kind of.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next is, events and community development director.
Sergeant Foreman was actually gonna speak, but he had an emergency, had to leave. And if there's any questions I can try to answer, if you have, we've been sending the weekly reports.
Chief, the only thing is you and Kathy and I need to triangulate about making sure the tree cutting stuff, we absolutely need to make sure that those areas where it's not clearly in the public right of way, that we're making sure we communicate with the property owners. In this particular situation, Pat had obviously specifically been asking us to do that, so that was all fine, but over here, there's some confusion about who the owners were and everything else, and somewhere, that wasn't clear, so everything's fine over there now, it's no issues, we've got a variety of places in town that is going to be issues, so. Okay. Anything else from the chief on this, Mr. Perkins? Oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
it's good, you're first.
Yes, just wanted to, and this is more of an update just for all of us, make sure we know, because I know we were all interested in folks in town, make sure that the brakes are getting fixed, right? I know that you did just a couple of the onesies and twosies, right, already, but I know that you guys are, it's been taking a little bit longer, not because of you, but because you're trying to get some help with regards to doing that, and I just want to get an update for these folks on it, because I know it's in the process, I just want everybody to know kind of where that is.
Right, I can tell you that we have bricks, we had some issues with getting bricks that matched. We have gone to one of the locations, and obviously that's private property, we cannot fix those bricks. The bricks in front of the post office we're working on, we did a survey, it's just a matter of the heat now, so as soon as I don't wanna say, give you a direct date of when it'll be done, but it'll be done soon, it is on our priority list.
Very good.
Ms. Hall?
Chief, are we seeing decline in the incidents of mischief and general malfeasance and all that we had for 3 months? Anecdotally, it looks like it is, but then the weekends come, and I'm not sure.
We're seeing, it sort of ebbs and flows, because we get these weird little incidents where we get graffiti on things, and, you know, we get public works out there that do spray off. I think it's about normal. I mean, I don't really think it's increasing or decreasing.
You're normal or old normal?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
like, seriously, like, is this our new norm, or are we, because
I'm hoping it's not
we're
our
still
new
in lockdown somewhat, so.
Yeah, I hope it's not our new norm. I get the impression that it's, I wanted to say kids, because I would hate to think it's always doing this. But, you know, it's the constant, I think people don't have anything to do, and when they have nothing to do and they're around, they get into mischief and like drawing hearts and different things on public buildings.
Awesome that. And I'm sorry, follow up.
Yeah.
I walk late at night because it's cooler, but I see significant numbers of people in the park from 10 a.m. to 1 a.m. I also see your staff, your officers going and running them out. Do we need as a council to discuss that, to address that, better signage, or put up a something that they have to cross at least, or is it not a problem? I don't know. I mean, I know our rule is it closes at sunset, but I'm also seeing the other night, Councilmember Finney and I were walking, and there were about 15 people in there at midnight, so.
That's a decision council needs to make if they
What was your
want to.
Is it harmless?
I think most of it is harmless right now. I mean, but it does, if people are there after a certain time at night, and unfortunately, what we've been doing is we've been trying to just sort of move people along, don't give them a hard time, because they don't have a lot of places to go. But when it's really late, they're not usually in the park just to enjoy the scenery or to relax.
You gotta watch out for the sketchy people walking late at night, don't you?
That's what they're watching for.
Yeah. So, but it's up to council if they wanna change the hours, or if they want to, have us enforce it more. I don't know if it helps us, public safety wise. At a certain point, yes, I do think people should not be in the park after midnight. It just, there's no reason to be there.
No good things happen.
Right. No good things, they say, throwing people out after midnight or drunks in town.
That's right, talk to them first.
So let me ask you guys, when you say, when you go down there, are you walking the path in there, or do you see people walking the path in there?
People are on bikes, they're on skateboards, they're hookah smoking, they're just sitting in grooves.
So it's not residents, because one of the
It's not
reasons I
residents.
assume that the.
None of them are residents that I've seen.
There was a family with little kids having a picnic, like
At
10 o'clock
midnight?
at
You
night.
know, at 10 to midnight, it's
I mean,
just
no
crazy
harm,
whenever
no
10
harm is being
midnight.
done, and maybe we do
Right.
need to, maybe we
Exactly.
do need to change the hours.
Right.
Mr.
They don't
Maybe
wanna be
10
a-
PM is more realistic.
Well,
be a crotchety old person.
Yeah, let me call on folks, did you have anything, Ms. Lopez, on this?
Just one follow-up question on that is, kind of along these lines, are you seeing, is it the same people over and over that you're seeing, or is it always somebody different?
It's usually somebody different. There are some, the skateboarders have a tendency to go down there, the hookah smokers are usually the same ones. But other than that, it is just a bunch of different people who
And are
just
the
come by.
lights on?
I'm sorry?
Are the lights on?
Yes, the lights are on all night long, which is what leads to some confusion for people. They think it's still open.
Right.
But we
That's
can't
what
turn
they
the
tell
lights
us.
off.
But they're not. Sorry, you know,
No.
the lights don't light the whole thing, you know, it's
No.
like, it's pockets, it's light, dark, so, I mean, it crosses my mind that nefarious things could occur. Especially when they're up on the grass, on the fence, you know, where they don't wanna be seen, and, you know, I don't know, I'm really torn on it,
It's a
because you don't
tough
wanna
one.
be a jerk, right? And if you're not doing it, you're just sitting in the park because everyone's miserable. And that's
Right.
cool, but then I see graffiti on stuff, and I think, well, whoever, somebody did that at midnight or 1 AM, or threw the bench in the bench is still gone, right? I think somebody threw the bench in the river and all that doesn't happen at 4 in the afternoon. So, I don't know, I just wanna bring it up, see what you thought.
Mr. Burgess, you want to say?
No, not really, I mean, that could be fair.
Yeah, you got it. Well, Chief, so the question, I mean, I guess is, changing the hours doesn't do anything, I mean, everything, the town attorney's mentioned this 1,000 times in different contexts, but everything is how much time we wanna spend on it, and money we wanna spend on enforcement. So that is really the question is, we're in an age right now where, people are looking at ways of reducing the sort of community, societal, tangential things that police have to deal with, so that they don't have to deal with all of those types of situations. So, this might be an example where we look to you and say, well, Chief, if your experience is most of this is harmless, and by harmless, I don't mean that there's not nefarious stuff going on, but right now, the police, for example, had to deal with the law on the criminalization of marijuana has changed recently. So right now, they're juggling this with traffic stops and everything else. So, the fact that we might smell pot when we're going down there might actually, to some people now, is harmless behavior. So, we're really gonna have to look to you, Chief, for a recommendation as to what you would want us to do to change this. And I'm not asking you to do this now.
Right.
But, if you wanted us to look into cameras or something, or if you wanted us to, I don't know. I don't know what
Maybe if we put up a.
Yeah, we could put up a.
Is it a, oh my God, I can't, because
Yeah.
I do think, you're absolutely right, some of it's confusion. You walk up by the bathroom and there's nothing stopping you from walking on a perfectly lit path.
Right, that's a
So
good.
I don't think it's
Yeah.
10.
Yeah, that's a good point. A rudimentary gate might be all that's necessary.
And if they see that, they might go, oh, it closes at what time, they look for a sign.
Then you make a decision whether to cross the barricade or not, right? And at least it's a decision versus just wandering in and going, because I know you guys have heard, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was closed. So.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't know it was closed. So, okay, well, Chief, if you and Kathy and staff can just chat about that a little bit and see if we wanna spend money for a gate or something, investigate that.
Thank you.
Okay, we need 2 of them, obviously.
obviously, because there's two entrances, so. Okay, all right, thank you, Chief. Ms. Little, Events and Community Development Director, and if there's no objection with unanimous consent, we'll include with her report a discussion of the town facility rental issues. Okay, I'm sorry, did I skip the town, where is the town manager's report? Oh yeah, there it is, sorry.
My bad.
Yeah, keep that going.
Good evening. So you have my report in front of you. The first item on it was the explanation of Discover Occoquan and how we're going to move it to an entire week. Sorry, last 5 minutes. An entire week instead of 1 day. I'm thinking this is a way to extend our helping the businesses initiative through the pandemic. If there's any questions on that, I'm happy to take them. Okay. Primarily, the report was regarding the list of loan expenses and the changes in logistics that we're going to have to consider if we host the fall craft show. The list is long and involved, and I neglected to put at the very top of the list our volunteers. We will need a lot of them, and we will need to depend heavily on them, and we will be asking them to potentially put themselves at risk. And I think that's more consideration than the $7,000 in porta johns. So I think now is the time to start thinking about our contingency plans on craft show. And one way to think about that is, at what point is it safe to have a very large event in our town? Or is it? And so I just asked the council to think about that, and if you have ideas for contingency plans, I'm willing to hear them. My idea is to consider a virtual event that would take essentially the Artisans Walk from Riverfest and put it online. So far as I can see, there's very little expense to us and very little risk to us. And what it ends up doing is basically paving goodwill with our relationships with the vendors toward the live event that we want to come back to. Also, it gives a way for a series of micro events that we could do. So we could potentially do an Artisans Walk for September 26th and 27th, and a Christmas market at the end of November. A chocolate walk, virtual event. I mean, I can see this thing taking on a new life of its own, and if COVID's going to be with us for a while, and it sounds like it will, then I think we need to have something in our back pocket. So I'm happy and willing to do a feasibility study on a virtual event and come back with you next time with some numbers and a poll answered by some of our vendors.
I think that's a good idea.
I got a couple of things that go around the room. So the first, Julie, you had put, I think, in here that by August, we might make a decision.
I really feel like either we need to commit to the buses or we don't. And it's a $30,000 expense.
So are we able to do that in our first meeting in August, or does it have to be August?
Mr. Mayor, the microphone.
Did you hear my question?
Yes. So I used August 1st as a general guideline. I think the first meeting in
Okay, the
August.
first meeting in August gives us a time to cancel and post it, okay. The reason I say that is because, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see any way we're gonna be able to have Riverfest, because I just don't think we're gonna be there. Yeah, we're in phase 3 now, which still limits us to 250. It's more likely to get more restrictive rather than less restrictive now with the openings that have taken place, and I don't see how we're going to, I mean, it's not even a matter of people making the decisions for themselves, or even the matter of, which should be paramount to us, the safety of volunteers and others. I think the government, I don't think the government's gonna allow us to have an event of that size. You know, you have some procedures in place that I think are great. I would suggest, for example, though, that we don't need to reduce the number of vendors by with the gaps in spaces, because we have plenty of room to expand them out into additional streets, because we have the same number of vendors, they're just more spread out. But so I think in looking at your plan, I was very impressed at the things you had put together to, if we were able to do this, to preserve people's safety as best as possible. I just don't think that we're gonna be allowed to do it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we'll,
Yeah, we'll know by the first, we'll make that decision the first week in August. The other thing I wanna say is, with regard to the virtual event, I'd just like you to really think hard about whether or not that's worth your effort. And the reason I say that is because, the Occoquan Marketplace, for example, has been successful, but if you look at it, it's a really limited number of participants, and it's a lot of the same stuff. So I'm sure it's valuable for those individuals. I just don't know that it's scalable though, for something like this, because to some degree, who are we competing with on that? Amazon? I mean, I don't know who we're competing with, but it seems like people are gonna have a lot of places to go.
people are Etsy.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm not sure why they would participate in ours. So, and I just don't want you to spend the effort on something that you end up then being frustrated because it doesn't generate what you would like. Now, I know a lot of this is, I know, because I hear it from residents too, who specifically want events, who have come forward and said, please, can you make sure you don't cancel that, or please because we need these things to buoy our spirits and everything else. And, there were a lot that contacted us being disappointed about the Spring Craft Show being closed, which was, an easy call, frankly, given the circumstances. But people were really disappointed in town because they just feel it's bleak when there's nothing to do and there are no events going on. So they want us to do something, but we have to do something that's obviously legal and safe for people. So, Ms. Holloway, and then I'll go around the room.
Kudos on the work as well, Julie. It's unprecedented times for events managers all over the nation. I agree with you on spending too much time on the virtual, but I do think a simple feasibility study, even if it was a survey monkey kind of thing of your vendors, to see if we do need to do that. I also agree totally with the events, but I just do not believe there's a taste with the majority of residents for having 25,000 people pouring into our town right now. And just the sheer number of people on Friday night when we do the ingress. I mean, my God, the people that we talk to and touch and get near, I just don't think it's workable. I have a client which has about 1,300 volunteers regularly at their operation, and they've shut down. Because volunteers aren't going to risk their lives to come and work the volunteer shift. I mean, that's very smart of you to be thinking that way, and to be concerned about that. So I would support a little bit of a virtual thing. I think we could get some attention to it because nobody else is knowing. Maybe it's calling around to a couple other places that you've heard have done this. Does it work? I don't know, but not tons of time. But I agree with the mayor on. I just can't see it happening. I can't see us welcoming 20,000 people into our town in just a couple of months. That's all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Ms. Bibby?
I may have missed a communication because I was kind of out of pocket with my mom for a few weeks, but on the 250 number, for instance, Shelley Tackett's concert, have you decided a way to work that? Will it be the first 250 people who show up, or is there going to be a way to online with a ticket?
That's the second item.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
That's the item that you want to go on the agenda.
Okay,
Did you have anything else on this?
no.
Yeah, I think that, thank you for doing such a great job on the potential limitations and mitigation plans. I do agree that I think logistically, it just is more than what will be feasible. My question for you is more about, and maybe this is what everybody's talking about, feasibility study, is the virtual events and diversifying what those might be, but I'm thinking about how would they revenue generating and would they be worth your effort and the town's support? So that's all. I'm not asking for you to say anything, but just to keep that in mind. What can we do virtually that is, and I know we've talked about this in the past, is an added benefit to the town, both socially, financially, economically, all of that. So
I've actually thought about that, and to be honest with you, the first event wouldn't be very revenue generating. It would be a trial run to to see how to do this event. I was on a Zoom call with 50 other, event directors last week. And 50% of them, 49% of them said that they were considering virtual events to support the artists. And I think, there's goodwill to be had there. I also think there's, the legacy of our 50 years of our Occoquan and craft show to leverage. And then I think that we do have, I could put together a plan to sell to the vendors so that they would come on board on that. But yeah, it's a risk. And I don't see that the first one making very much money at all. But if it leads to micro events throughout the year, I see that, and potentially Christmas could be huge, especially if we're gonna lose.
You don't need to say it, it's okay.
And the cost is low to set them up.
Well, that's right.
It's really, I mean,
But you're right, it doesn't benefit our community. It benefits those
just
vendors.
name
I
it.
could
And the
invite-
fact that we haven't given up on our craft fair, right? And we're just modifying it, morphing it into something different, right? With an idea to coming back when we can.
Yeah.
That's a good spirited thing.
Mr. Purvis. Yeah, so a few things. It is heartbreaking, isn't it? I mean, the notion of us not being able to do an event, but I don't see a way around it at this moment. You know, I mean, we're gonna be talking in a minute about somebody wanting to obviously lease that, which could hold, you know, let's say however many people we want, let's say it's 200, 250, and we have no ability to set up that it could be socially distanced. That makes me cringe, so can you imagine? So that would be one. I do think, as some others have stated, I do think it's worthwhile, because I think you doing stuff could show goodwill to the vendors, which could mean even maybe the best ones would be more interested in jumping in and supporting us as we move forward. So I do think that is worthwhile investigating. I think the idea of the smaller events, I actually think we could extend. I mean, you know, could we do some things and find some ways that could be revenue positive? I don't know. I mean, could we continue to do more music, more movies, things like that in the park where we could socially distance it, where we could, you know, we could have maybe a vendor or two that would be done in an appropriate way, and maybe we can make not a ton of money, we can make some money, you know, and we could do things for community members, right, and others that they would really enjoy. So I really like the idea of doing more events. And you know, these are crazy times, so and I know you're thinking about it all the time, we just have to be creative and clever and come up with some things, and I think that's, you know, I think that's exactly the kind of thing that we need to be doing.
So where I think we're gonna need to navigate this a little differently is that something like the craft shows and Riverfest, it's one of two major events during the year that are designed very specifically to generate revenue so that we have funding for capital projects and other things without raising the taxes on residents. Business taxes, as you know, are as high as they are allowed. Business real estate taxes, business license taxes are as high as they're allowed under state law. So there's no alternative to us really other than, we could raise the meals tax some more if we want, but the only alternative is to raise the real estate tax, which affects everybody. So this is one of our two main ways of keeping those rates as low as they are. The second thing is, this is one of the things that is, so now without that, we're gonna have to figure out with each event, we're gonna have to be extra aware of what is our purpose with that event. Is the purpose of that event to generate revenue? To keep tax rates low? Is the purpose of that event to give people in town something to do? Because they're clamoring for it? Yeah, it can be both. But it needs to fulfill one of those two things. If it's not fulfilling one of those two things, then we should be questioning why we're doing it. So, okay. Any closing comments?
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go, I'm sorry, did you
I have
have?
a question on what you were saying, talking about the money. We do have the COVID funds as well that we could explore to make up some of that shortfall that if we end up canceling events. I think we should talk about that later. Not now, but
You can't use that.
can't touch any of those.
It has to go directly COVID related.
Yeah, but it is.
It is.
There's some clever, it's not as simple as quite about it. There's ways to move things around and.
Well, the
Exactly.
town,
Well,
yeah,
just-
it's not, you're not allowed to use it to substitute for other funds.
No,
Substitute
I think
directly,
what I'm saying is
that's all I'll
like,
say.
I don't think that's what she said.
And that's a separate discussion for later, but I think there's some creative solutions out there being done by quite a few places that are canceling events that are not for profit. So I just think we need to explore that in some creative ways.
Yep.
Not you per se, but the council. Right. Thank you, Julie.
Okay, so now the next item is this town facilities rental discussion, which Julie is taking the lead on, I think, on this, right? Correct or not? Oh, no, I'm sorry, Kathy, are you?
We are, actually, Adam and Julie and I met
Okay.
about that this afternoon.
Okay, all right, so whoever wants to take the lead on this. So this is a request, as I understand it, for, she's pointing at you, so.
Well, I mean, I can have.
Just lay it out.
Basically, you know, and it's something, you know, Katie, we've gotten some requests, yeah, no, I'm waiting for, Julie.
Wait for you to leave.
You have to step away from the mic.
Anyway, it's my understanding, that we've received some requests from, folks that would like to use our facilities for large gatherings. So what we're trying to do is at least begin the discussion with council as to what is, you know, the appropriate, you know, when you're looking at private special events that are not town-sponsored events. You know, obviously we have our special event policy that was endorsed by the council previously. We have, you know, in that policy, we have the ability to put conditions on events, you know, that are being hosted in our parks. But what we, you know, a lot of what we're trying to do right now though is ensure public safety and, you know, and what does that look like? And do we want to, I mean, the town itself hasn't even hosted a large event in our own venues up to this point. And obviously with the concerts and so forth, we have, you know, public safety measures in mind as to what we would do, you know, with the park. But, you know, as far as, you know, just, we're trying to take council's temperature as far as what are your feelings as far as the 11 large events, you know, close to 200, 250 people in our venues at this point. I mean, obviously staff, we've kind of worked through some things that we think make sense, but we certainly want to listen to what town council has to say as well.
All right, so my reaction is I don't think we should do it because I just don't think we can manage it safely. What I'm conflicted about though is we need to have a rationale as to how we can do that. What if 250 people showed up for the concert that's coming up in July? How are we gonna manage that? We can social distance.
We, actually have, for the town events,
I'm
you know,
just
and actually for the town
question.
events, what we're looking at is drawing the circles within and encouraging folks to wear masks. Because that, you know, those are the guidelines currently. And because it is a town event, then we could have our police officers walking through the event and making sure people are in their circles and socially spaced.
So that is our plan for the concert. We're gonna have police. And how are you gonna determine, I mean, we don't have to get too much into the weeds on this, but how are you gonna determine somebody is in a circle at one point and stays in that circle? I mean, how are you possibly gonna do that?
Well, I mean,
We're just gonna make a good, we're gonna encourage people to
compliance. We're gonna assume and hope, we already have signs up about face masks outdoors. We're gonna do everything we can to let people have a concert and enjoy it, but at the same time be safe.
Okay, so what would be, so how would we respond to somebody who says, we're willing to pay to have circles put there, keep people in for this graduation ceremony or whatever it is? What do we say to them?
Well, I mean, it becomes an enforcement issue then, and really our only repercussion per the special event policy is, you know, yes, they can come up with their social spacing plan and require people to wear masks, but if they ultimately don't do that, the only recourse we have is really just to shut the event down. And we can do that, and our special event policy allows us to go in, and also the special events policy has, you know, gives the police the ability for if an event is getting out of hand or turning into a riot or something like that, to shut it down as well. But, you know, the other thing, you know, it's one of those things we're gonna have to work through. And I mean, I think the safest way is to say, hey, no private events that are gonna be over, you know, 100 people or 250 people or, you know, what it is. But we don't wanna arbitrarily, we wanna, you know, make sure that we're talking through this as, you know, council and staff, and we come to where we would like to be.
I'm with you on this, and I think this is the right answer, but I wanna make sure we have the answers to the questions that I know I'm inevitably gonna get. So, I mean, one is gonna be the difference between a concert with 250 people and a concert and a private event is that we can police the former adequately. Our only alternative really on the second is to shut down their
Exactly.
activities. We don't wanna do that. We
And-
don't wanna be in a situation where we're.
I think that sets everyone up for failure, is really, to be honest with you. I think that sets everyone up for failure, that sets up, you know, if we're saying, okay, you can rent our venue, and then all of a sudden, you're not managing it, so we're gonna have to shut you down. I don't think, yeah.
So then what is our number, or are you proposing a number?
We're not
that is
proposing.
suitable for this?
I mean, as far as a private event,
Yeah. Or are we not, are we just?
we were
continuing to
just
say no
beginning the
private?
discussion, and if council's feeling was that we don't feel like we want large public or private events happening in our parks, then
Well, I think we're saying, but
large.
that is a question though, is what is large in this event?
I would think anywhere, you know, over 100, we were talking about over 100 people.
So you're saying you would be in favor of allowing events in there above 100? I mean, this is what I'm.
No,
getting at.
I mean,
We have to know these answers.
Yeah, we have to know these
Right.
answers to these questions. Is it 0, which is fine if that's the answer, or, because you keep saying you don't wanna have large events there. Well, okay, we know 250 is large, but that's also
Right.
the governor's limit right now. So what is large? We've been allowing small things in maybe Davis, right?
right, 10 to 15 people
Okay,
for half
so-
an hour.
So what is our answer to that with Rivermont Park? Is it no for Rivermont Park, period? Or, and again, I'm not fighting you on this.
Well,
I'm just
no,
saying-
and like I said, I mean, we can go and come back with definite guidelines. We were discussing up to 100 people as being the number, if you're
Okay, so
looking
right now,
for a
it's not,
number.
is that what you're saying though, right now it's 0?
Right now, that's right.
All right, that was the end of my question, Ms. Holloway.
I think we need to have in this discussion the fact that if we open it to a large amount, whatever that number ends up being, you're taking that park away from the residents and the public as well, and I think that's significant for the
Yes.
discussion of our point of view.
Yeah, so just so we're clear on that though, is I don't think we're allowed to do that, right? Meaning, when people rent the park, we can't keep residents
Oh,
out.
no,
So
they-
residents still get to go.
Right.
Now, it might mean de facto, we're keeping them out because.
Because of space
That's
and
what-
mask
yeah,
wearing
that's-
or not,
yeah.
and that.
I
And
know,
then,
I know we can't cut them out. I looked at renting that park when I first moved to town for an event, and when I realized you can't keep them out, we let the event go. So I get that, but my point is, if you have a giant event in there, you're gonna crowd that park. And I don't think we should be allowed that. And so my number's way below 100. Right now, I'll say that, right now, way below 100 for a private event to be allowed in there. I mean, I'm really thinking like 25. So,
Okay, let me just go. Ms. Lewis.
Yeah, I agree. Give me some context, so what's the date and time of this proposed event that we're looking at? Is this like next week, or is this?
it's sometime.
August 1st is the largest.
So fairly close.
soon.
And the time of day, is it?
I believe it was like midday.
Midnight.
I don't remember the exact times, but yeah.
This is renting it out for something?
Right, yeah, the 200, up to 200 people was their request.
And I'm assuming that's August first is a Saturday or a Sunday, or?
Yeah, I think it was a Saturday.
I think, I agree that, you know, we can't close, we wouldn't be closing the park for that one event. You're gonna have, on one of the busiest days that we have of that park, you're gonna have this many people plus the public there. I don't see how you're able to control that in this sort of a time that we're in right now. I don't see that.
Ms. Vivian.
I haven't seen any, results or evaluation, and maybe someone else has on the council or town staff for events that other entities have done with the, you know, like spray painting, you know, like you and the chief did with the 6 week around the elliptical loop in the park, for doing the spray painting white on the grass, big circles, and that family groups are each within a circle. Has anyone heard any feedback about that? I mean, I've seen pictures of it, but I didn't see anything about how well it worked.
So far as I know, it works just fine.
What?
So far as I know, it works just fine.
Yeah?
We could
Okay.
we could fit about 24 around the stage area.
Circles?
For the concert, 24. 8-foot circles, 6 feet apart.
Okay, that's helpful. So here's my question then. Several people mentioned, how do we enforce that? Is there some kind of, Mr. Krim can help us if we decide to do that, have some kind of like a one-page contract people have to sign saying these are the rules, and if the rules are followed, your event will be able to unfold, but there will be law enforcement in the vicinity at all times, and if the rules are broken, then the event gets shut down. I mean, are we able to do that if we have them sign it? Does that give us some protection?
By virtue, you already have somebody signing the facility request form, so you already have that. And, I mean, the enforcement is always going to be the issue. And in a private event, do you want our police officers walking through a private event?
No.
And
I don't want our police officers focused on that. I think they can pay money, I'm sorry.
well, and to rent the park, there is a $500 facility rental fee that goes along with, obviously, generally, police coverage, public works coverage, but on the exterior, which is, the normal course of action. But, again, the whole thing boils down to, as the chief said, voluntary compliance. And really the only response we have when people start jumping out of their circles, if they, came out and decided not to wear masks, or, we're already right now getting many complaints from people in the community about people walking around on the weekends, not socially spacing, not wearing masks, and that's not even an event. I mean, that's just our town. And if you think about it, and you have, a private event in Rivermill Park on a Saturday, midday, if that's indeed when it is, 200 people that are crowding out residents that can't get in there and use it. There's a whole host of different things I think that we need to talk through and get a comfort level with. Not saying we have to get there exactly tonight, but I mean, we need to just have the discussion.
Anything else, Ms. Vivian?
Well, I'm just wondering, since we're losing so much revenue, assuming that the Riverfest is not going to happen, are we getting, Julie, are we getting enough requests? Are lots of requests coming in for events? Could this be a revenue producing thing that, or no? No?
I just want to make it bend in the,
I didn't know,
That's a good question, but yeah. It's
Yeah, that's right.
Anything else, Ms. Vivian?
no.
Mrs. Yanni?
Sure, I have two things. One, I think if we're going to choose a number other than 0 or 250, then it cannot be arbitrary. I think there's gotta be some guidance, and I don't know what that is, but it cannot be, does that feel this way, right? That's my first pitch. The second one is, to be devil's advocate here, let's say the people who asked for that time or that event or whatever just showed up anyway. What prevents that from any other group of private citizens getting together, and what do we do about it, enforcement wise?
I think there's something substantially different, because we're signing off on it.
True.
No, which means if they do it and we don't know about it.
No, but
It
the
depends on
difference
what-
is they're signing off, we're signing off on it. We're saying we're not advocating there, but I think we're kind of
Licensing our liability is.
Yeah.
The liability piece is, I think, is separate. I think it's what I'm getting at is the enforcement, what do we do about it, what is the difference if, let's say all of us just decided to get a little bit closer together? I mean, what, aside from this being town council, but a private group of people just doing that, or forget liability, because that's not the issue we're talking about. We're talking about COVID, social distancing, masks, spacing, enforcement, like what, I'm not saying we need an answer, I'm just saying I need to put that out there for consideration when we go through.
So what happens now is the chief, for example, if he sees that's going on, he and his folks, they just try to remind people about the fact that, because the enforcement on this is really very limited under state law. So, if they went out and it was obvious they were doing something, like they set up a stage, they had grills, or there's all sorts of things that you can do that. But you're right, I mean, people could effectively decide, hey, let's go have a picnic and let's have our family reunion in Rivermill Park, and we just go there and hey, everybody, just keep your blankets a certain distance away from each other and when you take
Or not.
Or not, and if it's or not, our police can ask them to spread around, but we can't.
Right, that's my point. They can say things.
So I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Perkins, you're
so good. On that, a couple things, because it's exactly right. I mean, people certainly could go and do that. As unlikely as it is, it could happen, right? I think the difference to me is not just a liability issue. If they're signing something and we're saying, hey, we're agreeing to it, I think as Occoquan, we have a responsibility, right, to be a standard for keeping our own folks safe here, right, number one. And number two is just at this point in time, where we are right now, I don't feel comfortable signing off on anything like that, right? Just because I don't think that it is, from a safety standpoint, it is appropriate that Occoquan is saying, oh yeah, you wanna have an event with 250 people here? Great. You want an event here with 150 people? You wanna have an event here with 100 people? I just don't feel that we should be doing that right now. That can change, and it will change, right? But I just don't see right now that we can do that. So I guess the question comes, which you brought up earlier, so then what does that mean? What is a group? Does that mean that there would be 25? Does that mean it would be 50? Does it mean it would be 0? And we just don't want to do that right now, or regardless, we'll say, thank you, we will be doing that moving forward. We're not doing that right now. You know, I think for me personally, my goodness.
I'm a 0.
I'm kind of a 0 right now as well, as much as I don't want to be. I feel like that's where I am right now. But I want to see where you'll come up with.
Let me, and I'll do a final round of this then. The reason I'm 0, Kathy, is just because of what you said about enforcement stuff. And I feel like, you know, Rivermill Park is the one place we have where Occoquan residents can go and get socially distanced green space exercise in town. It's the only place. Maybe Davis Park is too small. I mean, renting that out to 10 people.
Running around it.
Yeah, I mean, that's just not really inconveniencing anyone. I mean, they can even get to the dock a different way. But Rivermill Park, I mean, the whole reason we have that park is for people to be able to go out into green space area. And Ms. Holloway's right, that if we close it to, if we have an event there, I mean, we de facto close it to the town residents, I think, because even if it's only an event of 25 people, they may say, nah, these people are running around, we're not. I mean, you've seen this all the time, and we have residents who do this. You know, they come down, they bring their kids, and God bless them, the kids need to be running around outside. But sometimes the kids are like, wow, running through an old couple that's walking, you know, trying with a mask on, trying to socially distance, and the kid goes running right between them. So I just don't see, to Ms. Bienia's point, I don't think we can come up with a rationale as to why we pick a particular number between 0 and 250. Because if it's 25 and they're congregated near the entrance, or they're walking around I don't see how we do it. So I'm a 0 on this. I'll go around again, Ms. Howell.
To the points we've all made, it's tacit approval is what you're talking about. Yeah, the town says, sure, come on in with your big event. And boy, that's opening up a can of worms, especially with numbers going the way they are. And I know for a fact the residents are not going to like that. And I think we have to act on behalf of the residents in the town, businesses as well, and put them first and foremost on this issue.
And the revenue is modest. I mean, we're not going to be making up what we are losing elsewhere. Ms. Loges.
I agree, my number is 0 as well.
Ms. Vivian.
Same.
I'm definitely a 0, and I think Ms. Holloway made exactly the point that I was trying to get at, and thinking of, if we endorse this, what precedents are we setting? So.
I agree. And we're also one. No, I think that's right. I think to me this is more than money and more than even COVID. I think it's how can we look at people in the face and say, you know, you got to stand for it. I stand for something, and I think in this case it's 0.
And okay, so staff, I think you got direction on that. If you get questions about the distinction between this and the town events, I think the rationale you articulated earlier that, look, with town events, we can actually go into police things, are really our only alternative to private events is we have to shut you down, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to get involved.
Plus, we want to save the green space for our town and its individual and family visitors as opposed to shutting.
Yeah, I just don't know that we want to articulate that when we're rejecting people, private applicants. I mean, if they ask why there's a distinction between the two, because they're welcome to come to the
somebody could say, hey, I'm a local resident, and I wouldn't have a blue card.
Yeah, right, I mean, cause a town resident could ask for that.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, all right, thank you. So why don't we go on to, why don't we do the town manager's report while you're out there, and then we'll finish up with boards and commissions, and then go into closed session.
The only update I have is we have now gotten the third-party information to the special inspection division of Prince William County, and we anticipate getting the building permit this week
For the kayak ramp?
for the kayak ramp. And once we get the kayak ramp permit, it'll take 2 weeks to mobilize and another 2 weeks to finish the project.
So maybe before Labor Day.
Hopefully, at least.
Okay, that was the only update?
That was the only update I had.
Questions for the town manager, Ms. Holloway? I know I said I'd start a different place, but it's so easy to turn this way.
My person of here where you start, I'll go last and then I'll here. Thank, yeah, no questions, thank you, and welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
It's with you.
Yep.
It just, as you're kind of jumping back into things, if we could just get going on the sign stuff. That would be in parking as well.
Okay, and the last item is, boards and commissions. Ms. Seafeld, do you want to say anything about the ARB?
Do you want me to?
It's entirely up to you.
No, it is not, is it?
No, it is up to you. I mean, you know me.
You
I'm
can
very
say no.
flexible, so you can say.
Well, if any questions, we had a meeting, first meeting since COVID hit, and we had 2 applications, 2 exterior elevation applications. One we approved, one we tabled because the applicant did not come. We have around our application, it's written that we asked the applicant to come for questions, and so we tabled it, regular business, how we handle it. The applicant, did not like that, so we had a special meeting tonight, and we have denied the application. I'll get that to you guys in writing as to why it was denied. Any questions?
Nope, none from me. I'll start elsewhere. Ms. Bianni, any questions?
No, sir.
Ms. Vivian?
No.
Closures. Ms. Holloway?
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Perkins, Planning Commission.
Yeah, just a couple things with planning commission we wanted to indicate. One is that we will be finalizing language, which we'll then be presenting or providing to town council with regards to the noise ordinance for Occoquan, so that will be coming in our next meeting. I also wanted to mention, in particular, Walt, thank you so much for your feedback on that, and others as well, certainly. Number 2, we wanted to indicate that we have, as many of you know, we have as part of our capital improvements, our capital plan, we have at the entrance to town, we'll be looking to put up a monument sign as well. I had the first meeting with the first individual to gain an understanding of that process with the company, and have another one coming up into this week as well. And then also wanted to mention, it was mentioned earlier, that we'll be looking at the sign and banner discussion and the information specifically to sign off on that, not sign off, but discuss and sign off at our next meeting for the planning commission. So those are the couple items I wanted to mention. Any questions?
Any questions?
Councilmember Perkins, what's the layperson definition, working definition of monument sign? Does that mean it's posted on a?
Yeah, it's good. It's funny you ask that. I didn't even know this word monument sign until recently. Translated, it's a sign to the entrance to town, and generally, monument sign would be one that would be described as slightly more substantial.
Does it mean that it's on a base
I
necessarily?
don't know that it means it has to be on a base, but I don't know if it's part of the definition, but certainly it's the case that in many cases there is some type of base there, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Closures, nothing. Solid, nothing. Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. I want to ask unanimous consent to discuss whether or not anyone would like to serve as a council, seated council member on the Architectural Review Board. Ms. Holloway has served in that role for 3 years. 3 years? Which is actually is the term of an ARB member, actually as well. So she has done her duty and performed very well for the town in that role. Does anyone else have an interest in being the ARB appointee, or the council appointee on the ARB? You don't have to volunteer tonight, but we do need someone on this.
I would be open to it. I know the information went out, you're more than welcome to help inform a decision.
So you're saying it's not a no?
So it's not, so what I.
That's good for science.
So I won't hold you to this, because maybe what we can do is when Mr. Krim is gonna tell us about the things he does, he can talk a little bit about the role of these bodies, and maybe that will help. Mr. Krim, that, you comfortable with that? Sure. Okay, because that would be good.
Sure, I would just, just to reiterate, I'd like to, I'm happy to be involved, I just have no clue what the expectation is, how the board runs, what are the deliverables, what's the mission, what's the vision, what's the charter, if there's even a charter for that type of thing, so, yes, a tentative yes.
Okay, so that's it, so what we'll do is we'll see about getting you some information that's relevant to that. We'll also have Mr. Krim do his orientation for everybody of some of what he does, which would include commentaries on what some of the other town bodies do. And then you are, of course, I don't know if the ARB will have a meeting before is the next ARB meeting scheduled?
End of August, end of July.
End of July,
Yeah.
okay, so there may be, there may be an opportunity for you to attend the meeting as well to get a sense. Okay, thank you for that. So, all right, then, unless somebody else has anything else they want to add to the agenda, yeah. Really? Julie almost never, Julie never wants to, yes.
We need to discuss the panelists for the oversight, microgrant.
Okay, you want to come up here then and discuss, what is your? Oh, I don't know, is that, I guess we are. Personnel matter, yeah, so. Okay, yeah, that is a special. All right, so then we'll go into closed session. Now, there are three things to go into closed session on. We have our overall discussion of all the town employees that we're gonna be discussing because it's salary time. And that will be just us, so that'll be the last item. Then we have the town attorney wants to speak with regard to probable litigation involving, and I'll ask him to fill in the blank there when someone is making this motion. We also should consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring legal advice related to the appointment the microgrant stuff. So however we should do it. So who would like to read this motion to go into closed session? You understand the three things that you want to look at on there? And we'll ask Mr. Krim to make sure that it's adequately read. So somebody have Mr. Krim point out to Mr. Butler the things you're talking about.
So the appointments to the panel are under 2.23711A1, and the appointments, the reviews of town employees are also under A1. Okay. So that would be better than the probable litigation, specifically dealing with the certificate of appropriateness.
Pardon me? Yes.
Certificate of appropriateness.
And that's gonna be under A1.
A7.
A7? Okay. So if there's any blanks, I need to let me know. I move that the council convene in closed session to discuss the following as permitted by Virginia Code 2-2, or 2-3711A1, personal matter involving consideration of,
Missing Pennsylvania right now.
yeah, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the town. And also is permitted by Virginia Code 2-2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel by briefing by members or consultants pertaining to probable litigation involving
Certificate of appropriateness.
Period.
And the panelists for the CARES Act.
And the panelists for the CARES Act.
Which is under A1. And the specific town officers are all of the town officers by employees.
All of the town officers and employees.
Okay.
Okay, so they've been moved and seconded, moved appropriately. Second by Ms. Loges, any discussion? You do.
Let's add some more.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe my girl.
Agreement to volunteer.